Hi everyone, yasas que kalos irtate to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're going to be making a potato and leek galette. A galette is basically an open-faced pie. So easy to make, it's simple yet it's beautiful. We're going to be using puff pastry as the crust. It's going to make a nice buttery, flaky crust. We're going to top it with some leeks and potatoes, and the whole thing is going to be beautiful yet so simple to put together. This is perfect as an appetizer for any special occasion. Let's get started. So we're going to start with the potatoes. I'm using gold potatoes. Yukon Gold is what we can find here in America. Any gold potatoes around the world will do. I like using gold potatoes because they have a nice smooth texture to them, and it's the best potato to use for this recipe. So if you can get it, go ahead and use that. Go ahead and peel the skin off and then thinly slice them into rounds, about 1/4 inch in thickness, or as thin as you can get them without them being see-through. This is what you're looking for. While you're cutting the potatoes, get some water in a saucepan and bring it to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, turn the heat off. You don't want to continue boiling the water when the potatoes go in. And you can actually take it off the burner if you want to. Add some salt to the water, about a teaspoon and a half. Potatoes really need lots and lots of salt, and they're not going to be salty by any means with this step. Then go ahead and carefully add the potato rounds to the water. Make sure again that the heat is turned off. If you have an electric burner like I have right now, take your pan off of the heat and then leave the potatoes in there for about 15 to 20 minutes so they can begin to soften. If you skip this step, what's going to happen is the pie crust is going to overbake and the potatoes are still going to be raw, so do not skip this step. Now we're going to move on to preparing our leeks. Now my original recipe calls for 2 leeks. If you can find really fresh leeks that have a long, white and light green part to them, because that's really the only edible part of a leek, then all you need is 2. But if you have leeks like I do that are kind of scrawny when it comes to the parts that you can use, then go ahead and use 3 or even 4. Go ahead and cut off those dark green parts because they're fibrous and you cannot eat them no matter how long you cook them. You can save them for stocks and soups and stuff like that, or discard them, whatever you do, put them in your compost. And go ahead and thinly slice the light green and the white portions and put all the slices in a bowl of water. Swish them around so if there's any dirt stuck between the layers, it sinks down to the bottom. If your leeks are extra dirty, you're gonna wanna switch out that water a few times until the water is clear. Then carefully lift out the leeks and put them in a frying pan with about 1/4 cup of olive oil and a little pinch of salt. Go ahead and cook the leeks until they're nice and soft. It's going to take about 7 or 8 minutes. And then you can add 3 garlic cloves that have been finely grated. You're just going to warm them through until they're fragrant. Be careful because grated garlic tends to burn quickly, and it goes from nice and sweet and fragrant to burnt. And if you do that, you're going to have to start all over. Take the pan off of the heat, and then we're just going to put the cheesy mixture together. Okay, so for the cheese filling, in a bowl, go ahead and add 1/2 cup of sour cream to it. Sour cream is going to make it nice and rich and also add a little bit of tanginess to it. Feta is already tangy, but this makes it a little bit creamier. And then I like to take a 4-ounce block of sheep's milk feta. Sheep's milk feta is my favorite feta. Go ahead and crumble that over the sour cream. Always buy your feta cheese in blocks. The already crumbled feta is not good, you guys. Don't even bother with that. Crumble the feta yourself over the sour cream, and then go ahead and add a heaping teaspoon of dried thyme to the mixture. You can use rosemary, oregano, or even dill, or a combination of your favorite herbs. Mix that all up until it's well incorporated and your filling is ready. Set that aside. Now it's time to drain the potatoes. The potatoes have had a chance to soften up and partially cook. They're still going to need more cooking. They're not going to be fully cooked by any means, but go ahead and drain all that water off of them and then transfer the potato slices to a bowl. Drizzle the potatoes with some olive oil. Season with a little bit more salt, some black pepper, and again, I like to put some herbs over it. Since I'm using thyme, I'm just going to sprinkle some thyme over the potatoes, toss them all together. They're not fully cooked, but they are partially cooked, and you can give them a taste to see if they need to be seasoned a little bit more. It's up to you. The potatoes are ready. Now it's time to put the whole thing together. When I tested this recipe, I made my own pie crust, and my favorite pie crust is my cream cheese pastry. But When I tasted it afterwards, it was a little too dense, so I went with puff pastry this time. I like to buy my puff pastry from restaurant supply stores because you can buy these big sheets. They're as if you bought the pack from the supermarket that has those 2 sheets and it's just combined into one. If you can find it, great. Otherwise, you can combine those 2 together, or you can make mini galettes if you want. So they could be like individuals, and those are perfect if you're hosting a brunch and you want to serve that as the main course. Up to you. Go ahead and roll out the puff pastry so it has a 16-inch diameter, or get it as big as you can without getting it too thin. That is the trick. You don't want it to be too thin because you want it to retain its flakiness. Then go ahead and spread that cheese mixture over the center of the pie crust or the puff pastry. And then I've also shredded 2 ounces of mozzarella cheese. I like that pull that it lends. I'm just going to sprinkle that mozzarella cheese over the feta cheese mixture. Then I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle the top with the leeks and the garlic mixture. Go ahead and get that evenly over the cheese. Then lastly, we're going to just arrange the potato slices over the top. Now, I like to arrange them as circles, but you can decorate it as however you like. Then go ahead and fold over all of the edges of the puff pastry so that way they can hold everything all together and create a beautiful rustic edge of the crust. And you can drizzle some more olive oil on top so it can get nice and golden as it bakes. It's up to you. And then I like to also add a little bit of an egg wash around the puff pastry so it can bake and just be nice and golden. I have these egg yolks that I had in my fridge in this little container because I made a recipe that just needed egg whites the other day. So I saved the egg yolks because I'm always needing egg yolks either for custard or to brush over my pastries like I'm making today. So if you don't already have it in the fridge, all you need is 1 egg yolk with a little bit of milk, a couple tablespoons of milk. Mix that all together and brush it all over the edges of the pastry. If you're not a huge fan of that eggy taste, I know that some people don't like the taste that the egg wash leaves at the end. You can brush some olive oil over the edge and that's going to be fine. And that's it. Now it's time to bake the galette. Okay, so preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. The galette is going to bake on the center rack for 40 minutes. Then what I like to do is raise the temperature up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, move the galette up to the top rack so it can get beautiful color, and let it bake there for about 15 more minutes or until the crust is nice and golden. The potatoes start to get nice and golden on top too. Take it out, set it aside so that way it can sit at room temperature for about 10 minutes. And then I like to make a little glaze that's going to go on top with balsamic vinegar. So I'm using my balsamic dressing, the dark balsamic dressing that comes from Preheat. You can find it in our shop if you live in America. We ship throughout the United States. You can check it out over there. I just add about 1/4 cup of the dark balsamic dressing to a bowl, 3 to 4 tablespoons of really good quality Greek olive oil, and a little bit of honey, about a teaspoon of honey. Whisk that all together. And then I also like to add just a little drop of Dijon mustard or a spicy mustard into this. It adds another level of flavor and it just brings it all together. Whisk that all together until it's emulsified. And once the galette cools down just a little bit so that way it's easy to serve, I like to drizzle it on top. You could also serve it alongside and then your guests can drizzle however much they want on top. That little bit of acidity just tastes so good with the creaminess of the tart, the potatoes, the cheese, the puff pastry. It just brings it all up and elevates the flavor. I also like to garnish it with a little bit of finely chopped parsley, just a tiny bit for some freshness. Cut it into serving portions and serve it. Your guests are going to absolutely love it. It's time for the taste test. That is so good. It looks like a pizza. Tastes like heaven. The potatoes are so creamy. The cheese is nice and tangy. You get a little bit of pull from the mozzarella. The pastry is so nice and flaky and perfectly cooked. I hope you guys give this recipe a try. The exact measurements are on the website, dimitrasdishes.com. If you try it, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes, us.